Hey everyone, welcome back to the KPC podcast. I'm Carson Turner.
And I'm Hannah Thurman.
And today we have a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about Trump's reaction to Puerto Rico, a leaked email from Google, and a bunch of other stories. But Hannah's going to go ahead and start off with our first story about Puerto Rico. So Hannah, Go ahead and get into that.
So you guys all remember Hurricane Maria that hit Puerto Rico a while ago. Well, not a while ago. It was couple months ago, and the island's government just released the study that they conducted that raised the death toll up to 2,975, which is around 3,000 people. And they conducted this study because they didn't really know like what the actual death toll was. I think there's two phases in this, and so they're gonna see they want to know if people are dying from the aftermath of it, how many people died in the actual hurricane. And so that's why they did the study. And so President Trump tweeted, of course, because he loves to tweet, 3,000 people did not die in the two hurricanes that hit Puerto Rico. When I left the island after the storm had hit, they had anywhere from 6 to 18 deaths. As time went by, it did not go up by much. Then a long time later, they started to report really large numbers like 3,000. This was done by the Democrats in order to make me look as bad as possible when I was successfully raising billions of dollars to help rebuild Puerto Rico. And then he also said, if a person died for any reason, like old age, just add them onto the list. Bad politics. So a lot of people and senators and representatives from both sides of the aisles are kind of just complaining about this and tweeting that that's disrespectful. The governor of Puerto Rico, that isn't really a fan of Trump, had said in a live stream that people in Puerto Rico don't deserve to have their pain questioned. And she also said that she determined that the best decision was to use the number from the study as the official death toll, and that she trusts the process and that it was conducted adequately, that it wasn't a means to make Trump look bad, because it's obviously not his direct fault that people were dying. But I think people were upset because I don't think our government, and led by him, did a great job to help out everyone down there. But this is, I think it's just really frustrating to see that our president reacted that way. It's expected from him, but super disrespectful to the people that lost family members and lives. And they were without power. I'm sure that they're still without power in some areas. And so obviously they brought that up in the study, that people that are poor, can't afford things, and especially not having power, not being able to buy water and food, that raises the toll because it's the aftermath of the hurricane. It may not be because of the hurricane. Well, it is because of the hurricane, but not the direct part. So with the new hurricanes coming up, we're going to see how he reacts to that. A lot of people are leaving the areas and because they're going to be bad. So we'll see if he handles this one any differently.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I would assume he's going to handle it differently since it's directly within the United States. But
I agree.
I also heard yesterday that it was supposed to be a Class 3 hurricane or something. Now it's like a Class 2 or something. Okay. So it's like gone down, so they don't know at the moment. But that was yesterday. I mean, they could have wiped out the east side, and I just didn't know. But I guess we would actually...
Yeah, I don't know a lot about hurricanes. And
yeah, there's nothing political
levels
about hurricanes. Well, okay, there was that one time when like Bernie Sanders was tweeting about hurricanes, and he was like, told you global warming is happening.
Yeah,
and
I guess
like, well, I mean, it's a hurricane. It's not
a hurricane
like
season too, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. I do think that he's going to react differently, because I think sometimes he forgets that Puerto Rico is a territory of the U.S. and that they have representatives and senators. But we'll see.
I don't know. Well, speaking of, we'll see. We'll see this email that Google just sent out the other day. So I guess just to kind of preface this whole story as to why we need to talk about it, or why it's somewhat important. For the past 2 years since Trump got elected, we're always talking about Russia meddling with the election. I mean, this investigation's gone on for over 2 years. There's been really no sign of collusion, but I mean, certain people in the far left, like Democrat Party, are just like so hell-bent on like sticking to this investigation because they know it's true, but they turn the other way whenever we find out that there is some form of collusion that's going on. This isn't illegal, but like still collusion, but no one wants to talk about it. So basically the other night on Tucker Carlson's show, he found out that there's a leaked Google document where they were planning on meddling with the election. So basically, I've got some stuff from this article. It says, excuse me, a senior Google employee admitted to using company resources to make a silent donation, and they were creating ads and donating funds to swing states, especially with like a high Latino population. So, I mean, if you look at voter demographics, most Latinos vote Democrats. So whenever you're putting ads for Latinos, the idea is that you're just getting more Democrat voters. That swing state becomes a blue state. So then, obviously increasing the chances that Hillary Clinton's going to win. But what ended up happening was the voter turnout. There were the highest percentage of Latino voters voting Republican in like U.S. history, which they were very mad about in the. I'm gonna see if I can find.
For the election with Trump and Hillary?
Yeah. So they were just like putting these ads in, trying to change the swing states. So
that really surprises me. That more
but hey,
Latinos
don't worry,
voted
we're still looking at Russia. It's been over 2 years. I mean, this came out earlier this week, and it has more to it than the whole Russia thing. But don't worry, we're still looking at Russia. Big thing. So yeah, okay. So the the email says, we never anticipated that 29% of Latinos would vote for Trump. No one did. So it's like, yeah, they were pretty mad that their whole like behind the curtain scheme to tamper with the election.
Really surprises me.
Yeah, and doing more research, I found out the joint company that owns like Google, YouTube, and like a lot of these big tech corporations, they're called Alphabet, and 95% of their donations, their campaign donations, which is like in the billions, goes to like the Democrats. It doesn't go, it's not like a 50-50 type thing. And even someone like Elon Musk, I know he's donated more to like the Democratic side, but like I think in the last election donated more to the Republican side to kind of even out his donations. And people got mad at him for that. And they're like, how dare you do something like that? And it's like...
It's his money. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, and it's... I mean, I'm all for people doing what they want with their money, but it's like we always talk about this investigation that's going on when we have clear evidence that something fishy is going on, but no one really wants to talk about it. I mean, one person from their own show brought it up, and like no one else talked about it. And
yeah, I didn't get like a headline on my phone or anything. Didn't pop up when I was looking for stuff.
Yeah, and that's not the first time that kind of the mainstream media has like decided to not talk about certain stories. I think some senator, I don't remember what state it was from. I read this yesterday morning, but he was stabbed, and like big news outlets like MSNBC, CNN, they didn't report about the stabbing for like 4 days. They just said nothing about it because I think he stabbed a Republican or something like that. So it made people kind of wonder like, oh, are they fake? I don't know. This certainly looks fishy to me, but.
Yeah, I think they really just choose.
Yeah. Not to say that people on the right do the same thing. I mean, I know whenever the Syria missiles dropped and a lot of Republicans were critical about that, Tucker Carlson's report for the night was something about like pandas and like how they're about to go. It was something completely different.
I don't know,
but
kind of irrelevant.
To be fair, I know he did talk about it earlier, saying like don't drop these missiles. Then they dropped them, but then he's like, oh, panda bears are real, So, but yeah, that's all I've got for that story. But I know you have a lot of information about Brett Kavanaugh that you want to.
Yeah, lots of Kavanaugh stuff to cover today. As the committee was supposed to vote. Well, they voted last night that they're going to set his confirmation for September 20th. And so it was delayed because they were supposed to vote on it earlier. And so they delayed it more, which isn't very surprising.
Yeah.
And so because this delay, people are saying, like, I think that the nomination is going to be tainted because there's just been so much more media press and so many things surrounding Kavanaugh. And recently there was an allegation that a woman came forward in July to 2 Democratic offices, and she said that Kavanaugh in high school in the 1980s, I'm going to repeat that, high school in the 1980s, attempted to force himself onto her. Obviously, Kavanaugh has denied these claims, but the woman is anonymous. She didn't want to come forward with like her name. She didn't want to like be identified, so they're respecting that. But she claimed that Kavanaugh and one of his classmates had been drinking. They turned up the music in the room that they were in to drown out the sound of her protests, and that Kavanaugh covered her mouth with his hand, that he like pushed her down. So Kavanaugh responded in a statement today, and he said, I categorically and unequivocally deny this allegation. I did not go do this back in high school or at any time. And some women that he knew, 65 women actually that he knew in high school, kind of wrote a thing together and said, we are women who have known Brett Kavanaugh for more than 35 years and knew him while he attended high school between 1979 and 1983. For the entire time we have known Brett Kavanaugh, he has behaved honorably and treated women with respect. And then Feinstein, who's a senator, said that she turned this information over to federal investigation authorities, so the FBI, and the FBI said that it's not going to open a criminal investigation into the matter because they have larger stuff to look at.
Yeah.
I, as a woman, I'm someone that is always going to take the woman's side, but I think that this is a very, very small thing in a broad situation. That was in 1980. The allegations came forward in July. There hasn't been any news on this until last night. This allegation, they just released this allegation. So it's been sitting with them for a while.
Yeah.
And I feel like if they didn't think that if they thought Kavanaugh was for sure not going to get nominated, which maybe they thought at that time, they weren't going to run it.
Yeah,
but now
absolutely.
that, they delayed the confirmation and they're kind of, they voted on party lines, so that's how the nomination is going to go too.
Yep.
I think now that they're okay, let's release it. It's the last chance they have at, because they had the email thing that we covered last week that we don't even know what the point of that was.
Planning a weekend trip with his friends or something.
Yeah, well, it was him talking about abortion precedents and everything, but we didn't really find much on there.
Yeah, and also thinking if he was in high school, that means that he probably was, within the age of 14 and 17 too. So it's they were both underage. They were both drinking, which they shouldn't have been doing. And it's obviously when two people drink, stupid stuff happens. And I think it's kind of interesting because I'm not going to say, I don't want to draw conclusions, but it's like you said, they sat on it. It's very convenient how this story came out just right before he was about to, get in. It's like they use it as a tactic. But I wouldn't ever say anything like that because, I don't think the media is ever, decided to bring stories to the forefront right before an election to sway the vote.
And this woman also said that she went through distress and she went to therapy. It really broke her up, which, that would 100% happen to someone that if that happened but my question is, I don't know if she didn't want to say anything when he was nominated for the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, which is one of the more powerful courts. I don't know if now that it's he's about to be on one of the best court, the top court in our country, that she's okay, now I'm going to talk about it.
Well, you said there were 30 or 60 other women that signed a petition that said he wouldn't do anything like that too. And that's kind of, but I don't know if those women, if he dated all those women or just knew all those women. I don't know what.
And I'm it's a self thing that I'm fighting with once I read it. Cause I said, I'm always going to see that side and protect those women. But this is the first time that I've read something like that I just I'm viewing it at a different viewpoint than I usually do. And so I don't know how to handle that because I feel bad, but I think it was kind of their last chance at
But at the same time too,
over.
It's if people are fabricating events that happened for the sake of political game, it's they are actually just undermining all these other women who are actually being sexually assaulted because they just don't want the person to be, which is so much worse to manipulate and lie to try to not only ruin someone else's career, but to just completely overshadow true victims. It's if it turns out that it didn't happen, which I honestly don't think it happened, and I just think that if that turns out to be true, that woman is terrible for lying about that and just taking the spotlight type thing. Kind of like how Stormy Daniels was. They tried to imply that she was raped by Trump or something along those lines, but it's there are other sexual assault allegations on the president that are much more credible, but we all focused on Stormy Daniels, who just had an affair with him. So it's we're undermining all these other cases.
Yeah,
because
where there's
this
more
story's
information
interesting.
and
Yeah,
credibility.
yeah. So
She's releasing a book too, so
she can write.
that's
Wow.
that's great.
How long is it gonna be? Is it gonna be like
I don't know.
Woodward's 500 pages?
I don't know. I hope not. But I heard
20?
it's more about like her life, like her growing up, because apparently she had a really tough childhood, which
Well, yeah. I mean, if
I
she had to
didn't
like
know,
resort
but
to being a adult film
yeah.
star, I feel like.
But she
had
said
to-
that she wrote it for her daughter.
Oh.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Like
maybe we
a
should read that one
how-to
too.
guide.
Yeah.
Step by
But
step.
more on Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
So with all this stuff circulating about like where he stands, and a lot has been on Roe v. Wade because Trump has said that he wants to elect judges that are going to overturn Roe v. Wade, and so I think people are just freaking out about that. But actually, so CNN released this great article that kind of has where he stands or where he has voted or dissented with the Court of Appeals for District of Columbia. It's Roe v. Wade, the Second Amendment, abortion, executive branch authority, all that stuff. So I'll just kind of briefly go over it, but the most important one obviously is Roe v. Wade and
Right.
abortion. So in his confirmation hearings, which I think I might have mentioned last week, is that he said that it's it's a precedent, and he respects the precedent. And so he considers Roe v. Wade the landmark Supreme Court ruling, and it's settled law. So obviously the Supreme Court can overturn it if a case comes to them. So if it does, we can see how he votes in that. If he has an opportunity to overturn it, he may try, he may vote. But right now he believes it's settled law, which it is. And when he was getting nominated for the D.C. Circuit, he responded to a question about Roe v. Wade, his personal opinion about it, by Senator Chuck Schumer, and he said, Kavanaugh's response was, "I don't think it would be appropriate for me to give a personal view on that case," which when I read that, I was like, okay, I feel like that's how you know that a judge respects his job as a judge.
Yeah.
But like
being able to set aside what you think versus what you're
right, because that's what
on.
I've been saying, that, like, I think, to me, whoever nominates someone to go on the Supreme Court, I respect that they're the judge. Like, I don't like President Trump. I'm not gonna lie about that. He's not my favorite person, but if he's gonna nominate this person that like he thinks is gonna overturn something just because he's Republican or something, it's still the judge's job to look at the constitutional aspects of the case. You know, like rights to privacy was not actually in the Constitution, but it's hinted at it, and so he's going to look at that instead of his personal opinion, which he says. And so I think that that's a good.
And I feel like as a judge, you're not going to get all the way up to the Supreme Court by just voting based off of only what you think.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
you
just
have
not
to
how
make
it
those
works.
Tough decisions to make
and
those votes.
Yeah, so he also said during his last confirmation to the D.C. Circuit, if confirmed to the D.C. Circuit, I would follow Roe v. Wade faithfully and fully. That would be the binding precedent of the court, as been decided by the Supreme Court. So I think that that's like kind of settles that point for me. But he also wrote a dissent. So I don't know if you remember this case, but with an undocumented immigrant that wanted to get an abortion when she was
I think I heard
detained.
about it last week a little bit.
Yeah. So this was in last October, and the court, the D.C. court that he was on, voted or said that she was entitled to seek an abortion, and Kavanaugh wrote a dissent for the ruling. He said that the government. Okay, wait. I want to see what. So he said, based on a constitutional principle as novel as it is wrong, a new right for unlawful immigrant minors in U.S. detention to obtain immediate abortion on demand. He said that the government may further those interests so long as it does not impose an undue burden on a woman seeking an abortion. So I think people kind of are looking at that and saying that because like he voted in that, or he dissented from that opinion, that he's gonna like overturn Roe v. Wade and be like not
completely different,
very different, because I mean she was an illegal immigrant, and she was detained at the time, so there's that. Do you have any thoughts on Roe v. Wade and what he's gonna do with that when he gets nominated?
I mean, I think depending on what you believe, worst or best case scenario, I think the most extreme thing he would do is maybe find a way to implement regulation for it. I don't, like you said, I don't think he's going to overturn it. It's not going to go away completely, because I think it's just one of those things that we've adopted for again, better or worse, it's just now part of our
Right.
country. So
Precedent.
he might make it illegal to where, like, if a woman gets pregnant, not from a rape or anything, she can't get an abortion, but those other women who are raped, they still can't. Something like along those lines
and it's
too.
it's
but
one
I
judge
don't know.
too.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like a lot of the times, like this is a state issue. So I know that Missouri, I think, just passed some stuff on like abortion clinics and things like that, and like what they need to have at their clinic and rules and stuff that make it harder for women to get abortions there. But that's a lot of state stuff. So I think the only way that that would come to the Supreme Court again is if like one of those women or one of the abortion clinics brings it to, obviously they have to go up, you know, and the Supreme Court has to take their case. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that they're going to take another abortion case for a while. I mean, it's a huge, everyone talks about it, but I just don't see it going to the court anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they're just kind of creating this whole problem when there's really not even a problem to begin with. And I mean, that's a really perfect segue, actually, for my next story I was going to talk about, because we talked about Omarosa, who was fired from the White House for filming in parts of the White House she was not allowed to film in, so like breaking federal law, and was kind of telling the story like, oh, I was fired because like Trump is racist and all that stuff. And she's like, actually, I've got proof. I have a tape of him saying the N-word. I'm not going to share it, but I'm going to talk about my book that I'm writing. And it's like, oh, yeah, you really have that tape, don't you? And she actually does. She shared the tape earlier this week, but...
Do you have the video?
I don't have the video up right now, but I can play. We'll do some editing. So
Okay.
Here's a clip. Oh, wait, this can't. Here's a clip of that.
We hit 3.2 last quarter for this, so it's really going good. And we have a lot of things happening on the economic front. I think the military is doing good. And now on Niger. So what happens is we have decimated it's a rough business. They're rough too. They want to kill us. We've let the military do what they have to do. And whether you call it rules of engagement or any way you want to say it, but we've let them do.
So as you can tell, he was actually talking about the country Niger. And he wasn't like saying it like as the N-word, and then someone was like, Trump, it's pronounced Niger. And he's like, oh, my bad. No, he's just saying Niger. But she was lying and saying like that was proof. That was like the N-word tape that we were talking about. But yeah, I mean, there's this trend where I guess, you have to create news or whatever, but it's like we need to stop taking stories that aren't news and falsifying them and then saying that they're still news. I don't know, it's bananas. But that's really all I have about that story. Very short, but just very funny conclusion to something that was built up. And I mean, I'm just, all of the reporters who took it so seriously, like, oh, yes, this is true, it is going to happen. It's like, you guys are so dumb. How do you guys have a job, but I don't? That's what I ask myself every day I go on like some news site. It's like, this person's getting paid and I'm not. What is up with that? That's so stupid. But
We'll
I
get there one
digress.
day.
Yeah.
All right. Our last story today is I think it's kind of a light and funny one. I think it's funny, but it's about the FDA and how they are considering regulations to curb epidemic level teen vaping.
Yeah.
So they declared youth vaping an epidemic. They announced an investigation and new enforcement. So this was declared on Wednesday. It said that the FDA said that it's giving manufacturers of like things that like Juul and things, companies that have vaping,
punishable by the death penalty.
60 days to submit robust plans to prevent youth vaping. So we will see what happens there.
I didn't even know people still vaped. I thought people just did that in like 2016, and then they made the flash drive version of the vape.
The Juul, yeah.
And I know some people use that for a little bit, but I didn't know people still use those.
Oh, Juuls are all over the place. I think we just don't see them because of the no tobacco ban, right?
Yeah,
we have a tobacco ban.
You can't. Juul.
I think that's because I would be walking behind people on campus last year and I would like smell something fruity or sweet and I'd be like, what is that coming from?
Yeah.
And it'd be someone's Juul smoke hitting me in the face.
I think smoking and vaping and stuff, they're equally terrible. But like I always think of like in those old like crime movies where like Clint Eastwood will like pull out a gun and like shoot all these people, then he like puts a cigar in his mouth. But could you imagine if like
it was a Juul.
he just like vapes or like sits there for a minute like getting like a huge cloud? instead of a smoke grenade, he just rips like a huge vape, and then that's the
Amazing.
smoke. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like they should just completely ban it because vaping is just so dumb. I don't know. But
yeah,
that's
I
why I
mean-
shouldn't be in charge of law because I would make things like that illegal. But
A spokeswoman for Vapers United, which is a group that promotes vaping as a way to quit smoking, said that the FDA's moves could send people back to cigarettes. So that's kind of like the counter point
sure.
of it, which it's still, I think it's still tobacco, isn't it? Right?
I think some of them are. But
I think they probably go to like one that does.
I
And
think
then-
it's like nicotine,
because
yeah.
it's levels. That's what it is. Like you can
Oh,
do like
you level
like
up.
yeah, or like well, you want to level down. Like I think the
Oh,
lower the number is. We literally know nothing about
Yeah,
this. And
yeah,
we're
yeah.
like having a conversation
know.
about it. But I mean, I think
Is Vapers
We'll see.
United? What did you say it's called?
it's Vapers United.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
we
just
can look it
that's
up.
Spencer's, the store at the mall. Yeah, I don't know.
Basically.
I don't think it'll draw them to smoking because they don't have like tutti frutti cigarettes, you know.
Yeah.
So I feel like if they are told not to, they'll just switch to like sugary gum.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not a member of Vapers United. I
I'm
don't
not
sit in the
either,
circle
yeah.
of jewelers or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's all the stories that we have. So thanks for tuning in to this episode of the KPC podcast, and make sure you subscribe to our channel to catch us on Wednesday when we have our actual KPC News broadcast. Other than that, I'm Carson Turner,
And I'm Hannah Thurman.
and we will see you next week.